Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk about Space Marine 2 and why it's not just a good game, but it's a better game than most AAA games on the market, especially for the $60 price tag when most other offerings are 70 or 80 plus microtransactions now. So today I want to do a mini review or perhaps teaser review of Space Marine 2. I want to spend some time talking about why it's better than other AAA games on the market and why AAA publishers should be sweating over this one. And then finally take a minute to talk about the absolutely fascinating Warhammer 40k lore. Probably won't spend a lot of time on that, but it is worth mentioning. And one important disclaimer that I want to put very early into the video is that I have not played a lot of this game. I believe in doing everything above the table, and you guys know that I have very limited game time. I've mostly been focusing on Call of Duty, so I have to dedicate my hands to that. However, I've watched the entire campaign be played through by multiple people. I've watched a lot of the other modes. I've watched a lot of content. I actually fell down a YouTube rabbit hole where it was just feeding me Warhammer content. And then after I just watched this for weeks and weeks, I finally caved in. I bought the game. I sat down. It looked so insanely fun. I could not resist the temptation. So I played the first couple of levels and it was exactly as fun as I thought it would be. It was exactly as good as I thought it would be. And I'll probably be playing this, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour at a time over the next month or so until I finish the campaign, if Black Ops 6 doesn't monopolize all of my time. So just want to put that out front because I believe in doing everything above the table here. And now on to the mini review. The gameplay of Space Marine 2 is similar to Gears of War, but without any of the cover mechanics mixed in. And it does have an element of Doom to it. And I've heard people described as Warhammer meets Helldivers, Warhammer meets Doom, Doom meets Elden Ring a little bit because of the dodging, I guess. I'm not sure. But in this story, you play as a Space Marine, an 8-foot-tall, hulking superhero, kind of like the Doom guy or like Master Chief, who is basically a living weapon for humanity in this grim, dark universe. And your job is to kill as many Xenos as possible for human supremacy. Your gun selection is admittedly a little bit limited, but each weapon that you can pick up is unique, it's useful, it's interesting, it does different things. The melee combat in this game works fantastically. I was really surprised by that. The overall controls, movement, and agency that you're given over your Space Marine is really well polished, and it feels incredibly smooth to play. It just starts making sense really quickly, and the animations in third person are incredibly smooth and impressive. You slide in and out of executions in a surprisingly realistic way, and you do have to execute enemies in order to gain resources. So the developers kind of went the Doom route by having a whole bunch of unique executions for enemies depending on what weapon you're holding or what their positioning is, and there's enough and it flows in well enough to where it almost always feels fresh. And I'm just overall extremely impressed by the animations in this game. I think the dev team accomplished a lot by sticking to a couple of core concepts for the combat loop and polishing them out to perfection instead of adding more. If you really want to strip this game down, the movement system is pretty simple, the gun system is pretty simple, the melee system is pretty simple. All of it's pretty simple, but that works in its advantage when it's incredibly well polished and it feels fun. You don't have to make it super complicated. The main focus of the game, or what seems to have got the most love, was the campaign. The campaign is longer than that of most AAA games and is very satisfying. There's a PvE co-op mode and even a multiplayer mode with different factions and abilities. All three of the modes play surprisingly well and feel thought out, which is more than I can say of most AAA games. The graphics in Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 are better than they have any business being. They look really good without pushing a whole lot of boundaries of technology. You know, we're not chasing ray tracing or lighting or some complicated technical thing that any other game would focus on to the ends of the earth. They kept it simple, they kept it functional, they kept it large in scale, they kept it matching the aesthetics. The aesthetics are great. It overall mixes in really well. It's also well optimized for PC. Didn't have a lot of stutters or hitches or anything to deal with. The aesthetics are pure Warhammer 40k grimdark universe, over-the-top silliness. It kind of works, much in the way that Doom works, to where it's so hardcore and so grim and so dark and so extreme that it becomes ridiculous and then comes back around again to being sensible. It just starts making sense the deeper you get into this story. On that note, I loved the story of the campaign. It fits respectfully into the lore and universe of Warhammer 40k, and the more human element of the story can be boiled down to simply earning the trust of your bros in a character arc. It's a story that is so manly, so aggressive and violent and over the top and outrageous that it goes full circle like the aesthetics and comes back around to being wholesome again. So overall, fantastic game. And I think that AAA developers should be sweating bullets right now, because Space Marine 2 was not developed by a AAA studio or a particularly huge publisher. They're not small. They're not like, five guys in an office, but it's not EA or Activision or Tencent where they could throw $1 billion at this product and not miss it. And this small studio managed to release a fully functional, well-optimized, complete game with 3 different modes. The campaign is fantastic and has been highly praised. The co-op mode is really fun to play with friends, though perhaps not lasting, but I don't usually do co-op modes. And there's a surprising amount of depth to the multiplayer mode, which I was thoroughly not expecting. Beyond this, the game looks really clean, and to the best of my knowledge, there doesn't seem to be any major bugs or computer crashes or glitches. Comparatively, AAA launches in recent times have been unfinished at release, unplayable if the online services aren't working. They usually have one main mode they focus on that was designed by committee, and everything else is kind of an afterthought. So the developers at Saber, which I believe is the company that developed this game, were able to give me a more fully functional and completed product than any AAA game that I can think of in recent memory, and is $10 cheaper than those games without microtransactions, yet at least. So I think that's fantastic, and I think this is what gaming should be. I think that all game developers of any size, from independent to billion-dollar projects, should strive to achieve a product like this. And I gotta tell you, if mid-budget indie games can keep delivering content like Space Marine 2, I might quit AAA gaming and go back to the sort of upper end of the indie section, because this was just a top-notch experience. I genuinely had a lot of fun. And at the very last bit of this video, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the lore of Warhammer, because the more and more I watched about this game and obsessed it and played it a little, YouTube and Google and all the social media data gathering algorithms just knew what I was interested in, and man, it pumped me so much lore. I went down a deep rabbit hole of reading and researching the lore of Warhammer 40k. Doing so did not inspire me to purchase the insanely overpriced Warhammer figurines, or start playing the main game, or to endorse the unethical behaviors of the company itself. But I did find the lore to be particularly intriguing and much deeper than I would have originally suspected. The Emperor is a very interesting character. I think the Chaos Demons are very interesting because they might be the only meritocracy in the universe, and perhaps not even the bad guys. And then there's the story with the Necrons. But if I were to have to say there was a particularly fascinating faction, it's, to me, not the Tyranids that you mostly fight in this game, which might as well be the bugs on Clondaktu or the Zerg in some capacity. Frightening enemies, but the ones that really do it for me are the Space Orcs, which were in Space Marine 1. Not only are they way more amusing than any other faction, and that's necessary in this grim, dark universe. Sometimes it gets so grim and dark you need a little bit of levity, but beyond their levity, the Space Orcs might be the only group that exists without hate. I don't believe it's their fault that they were genetically engineered to crave combat. I also don't believe it's their fault that they are so dumb that they think combat is fun and that other races enjoy fighting them. So while they are violent, brutal, nasty, barbarian marauders, they don't do so out of xenophobia or hate or some sort of lofty goals of conquest of the universe. They're more like an anime villain that's just searching for a good fight, but they're really painfully dumb. So dumb they become funny again. A lot of the other factions, very fascinating. A lot of the human stuff is actually very interesting to me too, and the Chaos Demons. I could talk about this for a long time because YouTube will just infinitely recommend it, but what I'm recommending to you is to check out Space Marine 2. For 60 bucks, you get a whole campaign, you get a whole multiplayer mode, you get a whole PvE mode, and it's all really well done, shockingly so, for a game that didn't come out of like a, I would have, if I had not known better, I would have said this game had like a $300 or $400 million budget. I was really impressed by it, so I'd encourage you to check it out. Guys, that is all for this short video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.